Hi, I'm Katie from What Katie Did, and welcome back. Today I'm going to tell you about our Havana heel fully fashioned stockings. To tell you the truth, I'd kind of given up on them. I've had them on order since February 2019, and it's now January 2020. And I was at our LA office last week, and we were chatting about them. And I said, I've kind of given up on them. I'm not really sure they'll appear again at all. But as soon as I got back to the UK, I found out that we'd had a surprise delivery. There's only a few factories left still making fully fashioned stockings in the world, and there's a top speed of 30 pairs per hour per machine. And it's hard enough to keep the basics going, by which I mean the point and the Cuban heels. And anything slightly fancy, it's very difficult to keep in stock, and it's very difficult for the factories to keep up with demand. So that's why we've had such a long gap with our Havanas. But I have to tell you, I'm delighted to see them back because it's actually my favourite heel style. If you look closely at the Cuban here, we've got the Cuban fully fashioned stocking here and the Havana. And the Havana is slightly shorter and it's also slightly wider. And another intriguing point about these stockings is they've also got a slight cutaway at the foot underneath, which makes them a little bit sexier and good for wearing if you're wearing cutaway shoes. When you look at vintage stockings, Havana heels really didn't exist back in the day. They are quite a modern invention, but when you look at vintage styles, they quite often had a shorter heel than modern Cuban heels do. So this is actually more typical of fully fashioned stockings of the 50s. The Cuban heel now, most of these are made in Europe, although there is one factory making them in the USA, but the long Cuban heel is, as I said, is quite a modern invention. And even back in the 90s, I can remember there was a brand, Sweet Caroline, in the US, which was made by Magnolia Mills, and they had something. Their design was closer to the Havana than the Cuban, even though they called it a Cuban. So there's not really a right or wrong. It's just the way different factories make things. And of course now there's only a few fully fashioned factories left in the world. The designs are very, very similar. We only carry our Havana heels in black because, as I mentioned, it's hard enough to get them in black, let alone any other colours. And I know if we were going to do them in chocolate or something like that, we'd be waiting years for them, literally. So black is our best-selling stocking colour by far when it comes to fully fashioned. So that's the ones we concentrate on. What I should point out about fully fashioned is the sole of the foot is very, very fine, so they're very easy to wear with mules. If you wear mules with our glamour seams or any other stockings, the sole of the stocking is quite thick and you'll find yourself slipping and sliding a little. But because the sole of the foot with fully fashioned is very, very fine, your foot sticks to the sole of your shoe, the bottom of your shoe, quite easily, and you'll find them easy to walk in. So if you are wearing a fancy heel type or really want to show off Havana heels, then you can wear them with an open-toed mule quite happily and be able to walk around without slipping and sliding. So that's my tip, and I certainly like wearing Havanas with mules just so you can really see the heel type. Quite often it is a little bit disappointing when you wear your fully fashioned stockings with normal shoes because the heel comes up to here, so you really only see a little bit of the heel detail. And if you look on our website, we always shoot our stockings with mules simply so you can see the beautiful heel details. As always, fully fashioned stockings are very delicate. They're made from a very sheer 15 denier non-stretch nylon, and you do have to be very careful putting them on and taking them off. Back in the day, people who used to work in the hosiery mills used to have 2 manicures a day, once when they arrived at the factory and once after lunch, to really make sure their hands were super smooth and wouldn't cause any damage to the nylons. So if you are going to wear fully fashioned stockings, I really do recommend wearing gloves with this one style, just so you don't damage your nylons putting them on. I've also got a video about how to look after your nylons, and if you are going to invest in fully fashioned stockings, I really recommend you take a look at it to make sure you store your stockings carefully, because it's not really when you're wearing them that the damage occurs. It's you know, when you're storing them and when you're washing them and when you're putting them on. We do have a lot more videos about fully fashioned stockings on our YouTube channel, so please subscribe and take a look. And in the meantime, take care, and I'll catch up with you soon.